I want to go home. This is how I feel today. I really feel that I want to go home. There is a moment in time that I think of every time I think of home. It's a few years ago. We are with my partner in this island. It's called Samothraki, and it's a place I visit quite often. It's a place that is very special to me. And we're sitting at the beach with some friends waiting for the sundown. And there's this girl, she has this beautiful accordion and she sings this friend song. And somehow every time I think of home, I think of this song. And I find this quite weird because it's not a Greek song, it's not a song I heard before. It's not even a person I know, this girl. So it makes me wonder, what is it about this song that I associate with home? And at that moment I made some films of this girl singing and the people around me talking, and a few days ago I was playing this video and my partner is somewhere in the room and he hears this song and he looks at me and he says, Samothraki. And then he says, that moment is the moment. That moment I feel like home, he says. And to me this is quite fascinating because we're two people coming from totally different cultures and backgrounds. He grew up here in the Netherlands and I grew up in Greece, and somehow for both of us this moment of a stranger singing a French song, we both associated with home. And I really wonder, what is it about this moment that makes it so familiar? What is it that makes it so special for two so different people?
Thank you. Code from DK. Fish. Yes, we do. It's very tasty. Zijn quite small. Not a small one. Hoe zit het hier?
Congratulations. Silencieux me dévorait les yeux. Ma dernière relève sonnait, c'est alors que j'ai mal tourné. Il y avait des temps et des temps. Je ne m'étais pas servi de mes dents. Je n'étais pas dans mon eau, ni de charbon dans mon fourneau. Tous les croquements silencieux me dévoraient déjà les yeux. Ma dernière valette sonnait, c'est alors que j'ai mal descendu avant les murs, mal à l'aise sur mes fémurs, m'attendant à voir les humains se retourner de chemin.
Yeah, this the tail, and then the head of
Qui m'a dit salut, de voir on y comptait plus. Il y en a un qui m'a demandé des nouvelles de ma santé. Alors j'ai vu qui restait encore du monde et du beau monde sur terre. Et j'ai pleuré le cul par terre, toutes les larmes de mon corps. Et j'ai pleuré le cul par Almost.
Tu l'avais
But yeah.
Dopo mi faccio un che la salata non catalana, Cadê que tá usando a bética, Che cazzo follia sai?
Peut-être cette nuit, s'il rallume le feu, quoi. C'est le... C'est comme ça que je l'ai trouvé hier.
I grew up in a very old-fashioned place. I think many people from here, if they were to visit or see my home, everything comes from an old movie. But that has created a very strong interest in me about tradition and history and how do we relate in our past, especially when it comes to traditional events and just repeating actions of the past again and again. I find that quite fascinating, and I think that's something I originally grew up with, these ideas, and they were very integrated in my life. But the moment I moved away, I became an observer, and these actions got a very different meaning, and I became interested in them in very different ways. Because every time I go back and I participate in one of these old traditions of dressing with clothes that have been worn for hundreds of years and dancing this type of dance that people have been dancing in this area since it was first created, and just singing songs or repeating the same ritual again and again, year after year, it has, it creates a connection to something very familiar, something that not familiar only in terms of me living there. I have done this many times, but almost in a humanity way, that this is something that is so charged and repeated again and again and again throughout the years, and that builds a connection that creates a bondage and a feeling of belonging. A feeling that since I left home, I miss a lot of times. This feeling of belonging in a bigger, deeper way, and I really miss it. A lot of times when I refer to home, I refer to Greece. Greece is the place I was born. I was raised, I live most of my life. In a way I have no choice but to call it home. But I think of Netherlands also as my home. That definitely was not always the case. When I first moved here, of course it had become physically my home and the place I lived, but for a big part, maybe even still now sometimes, I feel like I do not belong. I feel like a stranger, like a visitor, like someone who is passing by but is not fully part. And I think the moment that I really felt Netherlands like my home was when my daughter was born, because she was born here and her father is also from here, so now here is a very big part of me too. And that was a moment that I had no choice anymore but to call here home. But it's also still the feeling of not belonging is there, and it has maybe turned into a kind of fear, because my daughter is being raised here, is being born here, probably she will live her life or have her friends here, and for her Netherlands will be like Greece for me. It will be her home. And there are moments I'm scared that our definition of home will be something different, you know. I'm scared sometimes that we won't be able to connect, that she will find my culture weird, or that the way I speak, or that somehow we won't be able to connect because our definition of home is something different. It is a quite difficult thought to have. I think very often about the idea of losing home. It's maybe a fear or something that I actually find very interesting, because it's something that it can take many different forms. It can refer to losing a person, it can refer to losing a location, it can refer to losing a memory, a taste, it can refer to many things, I guess. But it always comes with very strong emotions. And there is the place I grew up is a very small village. It was always a small place, but when I was growing up there, it was still alive. They had a lot of people, and I really have great memories of my childhood there. But since some years now, more and more people have been leaving to either move in bigger cities or abroad, and with the economical crisis making things more difficult, the place has been slowly abandoned. And well, of course, I'm one of these people that have left the place, and it's very difficult because every time I go back, I see that this place is slowly dying, or maybe not even that slowly anymore. Every time it's quite a shocking experience, because in my head I have an idea of this place that comes from my memories, from the time I spent there, my associations, and when I actually visit it, what I find is very different from that idea I have created in my head, and it's a very surreal feeling, and it's a very strong also feeling that you see a place and you think this looks like something I know, but at the same time it's not. It's just a ghost of it. And it's an experience you have to relive again and again every time you visit this place, and every time there is this anxiety and fear of going there, of how far the decay and the death has taken over this time, and how long before home is gone. Losing home can have a different meaning for people. Home can have a different meaning for different people. I felt that I lost a part of my home when my grandma passed away. My grandma was a person very dear to me. She was the one who partially raised me, and I spent the biggest part of my childhood in her house. I have very fond memories there, playing in the garden, picking up eggs from the chickens, my grandma cooking crepes and calling me Yevrimu. So, to me, her home was my home, and she was my home. So, a few months ago, she passed away, and that was the moment I realized that home doesn't have to be a physical place. Home can be a person. I wrote like then to my grandma, who was my home. When I lost you, I lost a part of my home. I often have this thought of coming to visit you, and when I arrive, you're not there. It's only a house, but not a home, when you're not there. So I'm scared to come back, because what home would feel like without you? A whole piece of it would be missing. So the last time I visited Greece, my grandmother was still alive, and since then I haven't been back home So I often have this fear that home won't be the same way when I go again there. Not being able to see her, not be able to or being able, but it wouldn't be the same, visit her home, my home. It would just be a house, and I keep having this idea of driving there. I can really feel the way getting there, every turn, the nature, the houses, and then I arrive there and I stand outside her house and she doesn't come out to greet me. And that thought of me is the thought of losing home.
Eledim eledim şeyi verir seçim yedir manlo. Se fuerte ol sol. No me roches medos de coraje.
I was just in the phone with my mother, and during this project I have been thinking a lot about losing home mentally when you lose someone you love, losing home because it is slowly dying because of the population. But I think when thinking about losing home, many of us think of war. War is a very direct thought. And that's what my mom's phone call was about. So I live in Greece, in an area very close to the border with Turkey and Bulgaria. There's just a river separating the area. And living there in the border is, you grow up with a certain fear, because the border there is here I also live close to the border, but there's a peaceful border and it's very different. The area I grew up is a very high conflict zone with a lot of problems occurring very often. So I'm used to my family having always a gun in the house, army bag with all the essentials in case war comes, and everyone in this area being prepared every day of their lives. It's a fear that is not constantly talked about, but is constantly there. There is a lot of times there is more army in the area than people living there, especially now with the depopulation. And what my mom's call was about a new episode happening right now in Greece, and of course, because they live in that area, they're immediately informed, and the army has put a red code, it's called, which means all these people who were in the army or are special forces or have guns in their home, they need to be at the moment prepared, because the possibility of war is pretty high. And this is a very strange call to get, especially when you're far away, because of course you think you have this safety of not being there, of not having to deal with it directly. But for me that is also a problem, because not being there means your family is there, people you love are there, your home is there, and you're unable to support them, you're unable to help them through these stressful times. And at the same time I feel of course I feel relief that my child is here and that I can be here, but at the same time I feel guilty for not being there for my loved ones that are there. And I'm scared. I'm scared that something will actually go wrong and I will lose my home with all that this means, mentally, physically, emotionally. I think it is a very scary thought. Is somehow a day that this weight of home, it's really heavy.